All right, so here on ZASLOW Show 2.0, we love having the pro wrestlers on the show. Of course, every Saturday we have a pro wrestling show. It's still real to me right here under the ZASLOW Show 2.0 umbrella. And joining us now, we have Brian Myers here with us. Impact Wrestling is in town here, Pembroke Pines, December 9th and December 10th, next Friday and Saturday. Winter Warfare. I'm looking forward to coming down, hanging out with my son, and coming to check out Impact Wrestling. Brian, thanks a lot for doing this with us. And I guess one of the first things I want to ask you here is, I'm a lifelong pro wrestling fan. Are we in like the golden age of pro wrestling for pro wrestling fans right now? There's just so much out there for everyone.
Yeah, I certainly think so, right? I mean, you got the rock and wrestling of the 80s and then the Attitude Era, and then this doesn't have a name yet, but this is certainly something that we're living in with so much going on. I always say, I love wrestling since I was 5, but the way how, I guess, with social media we're all so accessible, you know what I mean? I'd be losing my mind if I could have told Rick Rudy sucks. You tell me, you
Right.
tweet me, I suck. You could do it in 2 seconds. I'm going to see it. You know what I mean? I think there's something very special and different about that and that age we're living in. And that's just one aspect of it. We're also talking about AEW thriving and WWE and Impact and all these places you can work and do and go to these indies and meet people and signings and fan fests. So it certainly feels very exciting and different and lucrative, which is always a good thing for pro wrestling too. So I'm a
There,
happy man about it.
there is something interesting about all of what's come with those changes because of social media, right? Where, back then in the 80s, what's termed the golden era of pro wrestling back then. And when I was growing up, and probably when you were growing up also. But back then, I mean, you would never have any of the pro wrestlers acknowledging real life. I mean, they were out there living the gimmick. I mean, I read stories about how Vince McMahon bought the $1 million man, Ted DiBiase, a limousine to take everywhere he goes. So he's always the $1 million man everywhere.
For
Compared
sure.
to now, we're all so open about, this is who I am outside of the ring. What do you make of the differences there?
I appreciate it. I mean, I appreciate it for what it was, because I think that was part of the success of old wrestling of the past was people believing so much. But I do appreciate it as someone who's involved in it, that I can say, hey, this is who I am on television, but not, Tom Cruise isn't every character he plays, right? He gets a pass. He's Tom Cruise and he's doing these characters, and we're the same thing, and we should be perceived like a movie. You know what I mean? You should go and watch it and suspend your disbelief in that moment in time and enjoy yourself and be entertained by it. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I think now that it's just a different side of the coin that we're being honest and open, and so are the fans. And I think they're getting the best of both worlds. You know what I mean? You get to live in the moment, enjoy the things, and then we get these documentaries and books later on that tell you what was going on behind the scenes. I think there's nothing wrong with that, and it should be enjoyed.
So you said you were 5 years old when you started to love pro wrestling. I was 6 years old when I started to love pro wrestling. Do you remember, like, what was the moment? What hooked you at 5 years old?
I mean, I remember everything very vividly. So, my older brother brought home a VHS of WrestleMania 6, and I'm like, that WrestleMania 6 poster with Warrior and Hogan facing off and lightning, whatever. It's just an epic. Even to this day, I have
Champion versus champion,
Yeah, I have
title
it
for title.
proudly displayed in my man cave, if you will, to kind of remind me of why I got started in this whole thing in the first place. But it's just so epic, and the whole show just captivated me. I'm like, what is this? You know what I mean? It was just so larger than life. And then the first thing I remember watching live, and since I was only 5, it was The Undertaker's debut at Survivor Series 1990. And my parents wouldn't let me stay up that late or whatever. My brother went to a friend's house and he slid in the old VHS and pressed record, and he brought it home to me. So when I woke up in the morning, I got to watch it and see The Undertaker's debut and the disappointment that was the gobbledygooker and all that stuff. Like I have vivid memories of that, and it's just never left me.
Were you like the kid watching that for the first time on the VHS? Were you like the kid who very famously in the crowd when The Undertaker makes his debut? And the kid, I mean, he looked like he was probably 10 years old. He looked scared seeing
Oh,
The
I was
Undertaker.
terrified of the Undertaker, and to be honest, I think this most scared of a pro wrestler I ever was Papa Shango, because I was a big Warrior guy and all the tricks he was
Oh, he's
playing on
making him
him.
puke.
I'm 6 at this point, 6 or 7, and I'm very concerned about what's going on. Yeah, why the black blood is coming out of his forehead and stuff.
For me, when I was 6 years old and my first, foray into it was WrestleMania 3, and I thought Macho Man was the most devious person alive. He took a ring bell and he cracked Ricky Steamboat's larynx. This
Yeah,
is like the most evil man
didn't
there
want him to
is.
speak ever again. Yeah.
Yeah, this is the most evil man there is. I love the action figure podcast that you have, the Major Wrestling Figure podcast. What was the idea behind that? I mean, I have two kids, but and we have a ton of wrestling action figures downstairs. I'd like to say that they were collecting them and not me, but it was also kind of like me collecting them,
Yeah,
even though I'm a grown up.
that goes both ways, pal.
Right?
Yeah. So it's just funny. One of the gateways to my wrestling fandom was that those WWF Hasbros literally came out at the exact same time that I discovered wrestling. So it was like simultaneous. You know, I was already a little kid and I liked toys and I liked wrestling, and it was just kind of went hand in hand. And it really like propelled my fandom, you know, and like my creativity. And I sit and play on the floor and come up with my storylines and my federation, all that thing. And then, like, kind of sadly, that just never ever left me. I loved like that whole aspect of like being in charge and being like a booker and buying all these guys. And then, you know, you go through the Jack Sears and all this stuff and things like that, all the way up until when I got into the business. And then it was like this dirty little secret that I was in my closet about that I didn't want anyone to know about.
Right.
And I met Matt Cardona at wrestling school when we first started, and we were very standoffish with each other because we were so similar and we saw each other as like competition. And Mikey Whipwreck, our trainer, put us together, you know, against our will. And then that was like the icebreaker. We both kind of connected the dots and like, wait, you collect wrestling figures? So do I. And that was what like cemented our bond and, you know, our whole rest of our careers. But then it was still our dirty little secret now that we propelled into the main roster and so forth. And, you know, we just never stopped, and we always appreciated it. Like, you know, once we got action figures of ourselves, obviously that's a huge, you know, milestone and a bucket list type thing. And it just went on and on and on throughout our careers. And then one day Matt was just like, hey, do you want to make a podcast of this? And he asked, and I kind of thought, like, you know what? We're sitting in the car talking about this shit anyway. We might as well record it and see what happens. And honestly, it was one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. So thank God he came up with it, because it's really it's changed wrestling figures forever, but it certainly changed my life forever. I mean, it's been just epic. I can't say enough about it. And the thing I'm most proud of is what I just kind of, you know, touched on. Like, now people, it's like, it's cool to collect wrestling figures. It's not anybody's dirty little secret. Everyone's very open and honest about it. And it's just a very, very fun hobby.
It's the same thing when it comes to being a pro wrestling fan too, because when I was growing up, being a pro wrestling fan was my dirty little secret. This is my thing that I like, that everyone else thinks is really corny. I'm not telling anybody else about it. It's my thing. But if I meet someone else who I find out also likes my dirty little secret, we're best friends now.
Yeah, yep. Instant connection. Yes. Yeah. If I was in high school and I saw someone with a wrestling shirt, I'm like, whoa, you know, it was like, gotta talk to that guy, and it would always we'd always hit it off, you know.
What do you think? Well, like, it's so much more accepted now, mainstream, to be into pro wrestling. I'm certainly not embarrassed anymore to tell anybody. That comes with age, I guess, as well. But do you think that they're like what was there a turning point, you think, over the last 15, 20 years where somehow it became like totally acceptable, totally mainstream?
I think a lot of it does have to do with kayfabe kind of being dead, right? You know, because it was the people going, that stuff's fake though, right? Like, you get a little less of that than just, hey, enjoy it. Like I said, like any other movie or show that you like, it's the same exact thing. Chill out, pal. You know what I mean? Like, instead of that initial argument, you can just talk about it kind of freely. So I think that's the big leap, right? The big thing that changed over the years, you know. It goes both ways, because the boys were protected it forever too, you know, and that went away.
Do you get insulted when you hear someone say it's fake?
I'm more embarrassed for the person that's asked me the question, thinking like, you've gone through life in this day and age with the internet and television and all these things, and you still have to ask that. It's like I have a wrestling school, so when people show up and like they're so clueless, I'm just like, man, like, there was no YouTube when I was a kid getting into this. Like, to find the information that I needed to without a trainer or somebody telling me was almost impossible.
Mm-hmm.
You could literally go on YouTube for free in seconds and find documentaries and backstage things and like really get a grasp of what goes on and how this whole thing works, right? So for you to be so ill prepared and want to be a wrestler, it's just like, I've almost already like washed my hands of you, to be honest with you, when you're that far off. But yeah, that, like, this day and age when people ask me that, I'm more embarrassed for the person there, because, you know, I have nothing to be embarrassed about. You know, I've traveled the world more times than I can remember. I've made a lot of money. I've made some of the best friends and relationships that anyone could ever have in their life, and I have memories and things I'll let, you know, I live a very satisfied life. So it's like, if you think it's just funny haha stuff because it's not real, whew, I can't relate to you, you know.
Brian Myers and Impact Wrestling are here in Pembroke Pines, December 9 and December 10, Friday and Saturday night, Winter Warfare. So you're a family man. How does it work with all the travel? It must be difficult. Like, how do you make all that work?
It's tough, man. I can't bullshit on that one. Like, you're gonna miss things. It's just kind of the way it works. It's cool having like the limited schedule I have with Impact, and then being my own boss with my independent bookings and stuff. And I can kind of say yes and no to things instead of be there when you got to be there. I do have that luxury from time to time, but of course it doesn't always work out, and you miss things, and it's tough. It's not easy at all. But that's part of the business. I tell people all the time, like, if you want to be a really successful wrestler and never leave your town, good luck, try, because it's not possible. You know what I mean? Wrestlers travel, they make towns, they make dates, and that's just part of the business. It comes with the success. So,
and what about with your kids? Like, do you have to protect them where it's, hey, daddy is never in trouble, he's safe, he's going to be okay? Like, how does that work?
So the current situation is kind of funny. I have a 5.5-year-old and a 2.5-year-old. Neither could have cared less about wrestling until about May. They came to one of my shows, and just like this light bulb went off where it's just become the coolest thing ever. Like,
did that make you proud?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I never thought there'd, ever be a moment where they cared. They're girls, and like, I just didn't expect it, and I wasn't pushing on them by any means, but I'm going to certainly enjoy it while they care. I mean, I just picked up my 5.5-year-old from school, and she knows tonight I have to coach at my wrestling school, and she's like, can I come? And she comes now. And so she's that like interested in it. It's a pretty cool thing.
That's very cool. Who was your favorite wrestler growing up?
There's so many, too many to name. Ultimate Warrior was the first one that really captivated me because he was just so goddamn larger than life. You see him at 5 years old, and it's like, you don't care that he's spewing gibberish. You don't even know, and then beyond that, it was the Rockers, Texas Tornado, Mr. Perfect. Those are the ones early on that I was like super into.
The Rockers, never tag team champions. How is that even possible?
Well, technically they were.
You're right.
The match was so abysmal they couldn't air it, but yeah,
amazing.
Amazing. It all worked out for Sean, so I don't think he's complaining about that.
Do you, when you're not on the road, do you stay away from watching any kind of pro wrestling? Like, it's ZASLOW Show 2.0. It's a sports show here in Miami. I'm not watching sports all the time at night. Like, sometimes I do want to get away from it.
No, I'm pretty sick in the head. I watch wrestling like every single day. I mean, not to mention I have to be like, I'm basically a action figure dirt sheet reporter. I constantly going like AEW is, I have to like know all this stuff for my show and my content, so I'm attached to it that way. You know what I mean? If like, someone's getting a figure for the first time and there's news and stuff, so it kind of loops itself into, but I'm also I've literally been so madly in love with wrestling my whole life. It has not gone away. And it's so strange and difficult and hard that the second I don't love wrestling, I'll just probably not do it anymore. You know what I mean? Like, there's no point because it's so unique and difficult. Like, if you don't passionately love it, it's probably not for you. You know what I mean?
Do you feel a rivalry with other promotions, or do you really genuinely hope that just everyone has success?
No, I want everyone to thrive. It'd be foolish because that creates opportunity everywhere for everyone. And at this point now, I have so many friends in the business. I have so many students in the business. Like, what? That would be just a foolish thing for me to not wish that upon everybody.
But it wouldn't have been like that 20 plus years ago, right? Like, if somebody in Impact hears that Brian Myers is, friends with someone in WWE, they probably wouldn't like that very much, right?
I don't think so. I think the boys have always kind of been the boys. To me, that's maybe my favorite thing about being a wrestler is the camaraderie. You know what I mean? You're doing things with people and experiencing things, like you said, missing birthdays and things like that. Hey, I travel with Heath Slater. I know he knows what that's like. I mean, you can kind of find that fellowship, because they're going through the same stuff.
So the dirt sheets, I don't read any of that stuff because I don't want anything spoiled for me. Like, I like watching Game of Thrones too. I don't want to read the script to the show before I watch this week's episode. So
yeah,
I don't like knowing any of who's going to debut, where's the storyline going. Do you, as a wrestler, pay attention to that kind of stuff in the dirt sheets? And if you do, what percentage is completely fabricated?
So like in high school, when I first discovered it, I thought it was pretty cool. I'd be like, what? So-and-so's coming to WCW. And then as I got into the business and I realized that it's like, man, I would say 75% bullshit. It's like, what's the point? So I've really just gotten away from it, like almost completely. Like, I mean, 0% at this point. But I do understand the excitement of it. I mean, if I ever use a dirt sheet, it's to like look up results of something to see if what the show was. Never like what's going to happen. And most of the time I know, like I have so many friends everywhere and so many group chats and whatever the hell is going on. Like I pretty much know. It's very rare that if I don't know, then I feel like nobody knows. You know what I mean? That was a well kept thing. I don't know.
How did your losing streak in WWE come about? Was it organic? Was it a
No,
planned
it's just
thing?
a dirt sheet article, like you just said. People were tweeting it at me. I was like on the road, whatever, and making some loop. And fans were tweeting me this article. I don't know who wrote it. It was a dirt sheet article about how I've lost 100 matches in a row. And instead of being upset by it, I went, wow, that's definitely true. You know? So then I brought it to the writers and I kept begging, like, let's run with it. It's like maybe there's something there. It's better than just being the guy who randomly loses all the time. I'd rather be like the biggest loser. And it worked beyond my wildest dreams, man.
I'm glad you say it like that you see it as a positive thing, because my younger son, anytime the name Kurt Hawkins gets mentioned, he 1,000% always knows who you are, and he's never going to forget who you are because of that streak.
There was points like, and I don't need to like really toot my horn here, but sometimes on WWE live events, it was like one of the most like crowd reacting acts going on in the night, because they started to feel for me, that I started to get sympathy for one, and then they wanted to be there and say, okay, I was there when Kurt Hawkins won. You know, people were rooting me on. It was like an organic babyface turn came out of it. I mean, like honestly, it was beyond my wildest dreams of how successful. Did I envision it going 269 losses and ending at WrestleMania? No, never. But it was. I'm just proud of myself that I had the foresight to not be like most people would be like, oh, I've been losing and be sad about it. I was like, oh, let's turn this into something. You know what I mean? But like I said, we're all characters. Like I can be this losing streak character. That's a thing.
Now, winning at WrestleMania is obviously like amazing and a dream come true. But like, were you cool with the streak ending?
Yeah, because like that's like a dream scenario, right?
Yeah.
I used to never think about it ending because I didn't want to drive myself nuts. So I just, I like had like a cheat code to the business. I kind of like took politics out of pro wrestling. I would walk in and be like, what's your finish? Cool. I'll take it the best possible way I can. Awesome. Like I know I'm losing. So like there was no like hurt feelings, I guess, and that the WrestleMania thing, it all happened so fast. That was not the plan, it just kind of was one of those crazy things.
When you're in front of a crowd like that, I mean, that WrestleMania is probably like 70, 80,000 people. Like, do you have to calm yourself down, like the nerves, the anxiety, or are you totally cool?
A little bit of both. Yeah. Just kind of like, it's almost like the anticipation of any match, you get the nerves and the excitement. And then once kind of like the bell rings, or you take that first bump, you kind of go into like tunnel vision, work mode kind of thing.
Brian Myers and Impact Wrestling are here December 9 and 10, Pembroke Pines, Winter Warfare. Who is your favorite current wrestler to watch when you got free time?
Oh, good question. I have to shout out MJF, the current AEW world champion that I trained.
You trained him. How about that?
Yeah, very proud of him, and I do enjoy his work, and he is, one of the best in the world right now at what we do. He's absolutely killing it. From a fan standpoint, who do I like to watch? Great question. I like to watch Heath Slater, but that's for all the wrong reasons. Eddie Edwards is one of my favorites to be in the ring with and watch. I just think he's phenomenal.
What is the is there still a big goal out there for Brian Myers before you're done with pro wrestling?
Yeah, I mean, I've already been the Impact Tag Team Champion, but I would love to be Impact Tag Team Champions with Matt Cardona, the major players. I do truly feel we're the best team in the company, hands down, and we deserve to be in that spot. And I think the ultimate goal since day one that I've been in Impact has been the World Heavyweight Championship for sure.
Brian, this was fun. I appreciate you hanging out with us. Plug the podcast again, the Major Wrestling Figure Podcast. I love it.
The Major Wrestling Figure Podcast drops every Friday wherever you get your podcasts, and give it a shot. Most people think, oh, I'm not really into wrestling figures. It's about a lot more than just wrestling figures. So give us a chance, check it out. You might be highly entertained, I promise you.
What's the wrestling figure it took you forever to get your hands on and you finally did?
There's tons. I collect all the original ECW ones autographed. So I got Chris Candido pretty easily, and then the other tough one was Mike Awesome because he's passed on, but I eventually got it a few years ago. That was a whole holy grail, and I completed that collection. And then I moved on to autographed WWF Hasbro's, which I have a up to like 80 now, and I still need like 20 or so, but pretty nuts.
How many
And
do you
there's
have total? All your action figures?
It's impossible to tell you. Impossible.
Thousands?
Thousands. Yeah, no way to even. I wouldn't even waste my time counting because my life's too good to sit around and count toys all day.
It's awesome. This was great. Thank you, Brian. I appreciate it.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Check out Impact Wrestling. We're coming, baby.